founders wanted the federal government excluded from all problems relating to religion and churches. Let's get to this. You remember that when we talked about the Bill of Rights, we said that those Bill of Rights originally only applied to the national government. We had 13 state governments that had come together and formed with the new Constitution a stronger national government also, which we needed. It gave some specific limited powers in Article 1, Section 8. And everything else was reserved to the states because they had 100% of the power to begin with, and they didn't trust this big national government. I mean, maybe Alexander Hamilton did because he thought he was going to be a big part of it. And the Federalists wanted to destroy, and thank goodness we had the Federalists to help get they were in favor of passing the Constitution and having a stronger national government. The anti-Federalists were not against the Constitution. They were only against the Constitution the way it stood without a Bill of Rights. And so they said we shouldn't ratify the Constitution without a Bill of Rights. And so immediately they started working on a Bill of Rights. They sent that out sometime in 1789, and later in 1789 it was unanimous, all of the states, knowing that we're going to have a Bill of Rights. The only question was which of the 12 amendments that were being sent out would be ratified. There were 10 of them that were ratified, and that's our Bill of Rights. But that Bill of Rights only limited the national government. The first one starts off and says, Congress shall make no law. It doesn't say the states shall make no law. And everybody understood, and the Founding Fathers talked about it over and over, and there was not any question in anyone's minds that the Bill of Rights only limited the national government. I'm going to end this up. I put it on here because there's just no other way to get around it. We've got to talk about the 14th Amendment. I love Cleon Skousen, but I'll be the first one to say that Cleon Skousen doesn't talk much about the 14th Amendment. And the reason is that he's a believer that the 14th Amendment in many ways has been used to mess up the Constitution. It's been interpreted and used by Congress and the President and especially the U.S. Supreme Court to and misinterpreted in some ways. We're going to get around to talking about that. Please, someone, because Anwar is going to take time today and tell us about the Muslim religion, and then we're going to get a chance to ask any and all questions that we want, right? Just cut me off. At 7 o'clock, say, time's up. Okay. So we want to have plenty of time for that before the call to prayer. When we started off, the Bill of Rights only applied to the national government. Because of the 14th Amendment and over a bunch of cases in the next 30, 40, 50 years, all of the Bill of Rights, pretty much all of the Bill of Rights, have been applied to the states also. Was that a good or a bad thing? Should it have been applied to all of the states? What might have been done differently? Think about that as we talk about this. At least 7 of the states, it says here, had officially established religions. Connecticut, Congregational Church; Delaware, some Christian Faith; Maryland, New Hampshire, Protestants; New Jersey, Protestant; South Carolina, Protestant; Massachusetts. You remember Roger Williams was a member of the Church of England, and then he said, this is not right. We need to purify the church, so he became a Puritan. And over in England, well, they were persecuted there, so he left England with the other Puritans. The Puritans that came over first made this pilgrimage to America, and we call them the Pilgrims. And they came over to get away from the religious persecution that they had there. And the Puritans pretty much ended up in Massachusetts. And the Puritans were so strong on their Puritan religion that they began persecuting all the people who were not Puritans, including Roger Williams, who was a Puritan, but he said, I got to get out of here because we got the same problem here that we had back in England with the Church of England. And so he went to Rhode Island and founded, my recollection is he founded a Providence plantation, the Rhode Island, for people, I think it was the Quakers, not to mention the witches, they had the Salem witch trials, right, that were being persecuted and killed there in Massachusetts. So we had some serious religious persecution that was going on here. And as far as the laws and the constitution of the land, at that time, it was not legal for the national government to establish any religion, but it was legal for the state governments to establish a religion, unless it was proscribed in their own state Bill of Rights or Declaration of
I
Rights.
think some of them too had the requirement you had to be a Christian or something.
Yes.
For public office.
Yes, there is absolutely no question they had religious tests. There's not any question that there was establishment of religion in some of the states. And it was constitutional. Whether it was good or bad, it was constitutional. I mean, if we stop here for a second and say, well, wait a minute. We believe in God-given unalienable rights. We believe in freedom of conscience. Do I believe? I won't speak for any of you, but I'll just ask, do I believe that any national government should tell me what religion? No. Do I believe that any state government should tell me what religion? No, I don't think that they should. And if they do, I'm moving to another state because I don't want to be forced to be in my religion, right? But that was the idea. You could have different. They said back then, look, we didn't have it. Wasn't perfect yet. It's probably not perfect yet either, but still better than anywhere else. So we had state establishment of religion. The founders felt that it would have been catastrophic and might have precipitated strife if the federal government had tried to establish a national policy on religion or disestablish the denominations which the different states had adopted, some of the states had adopted. And so they were examining, founders who were examining this problem were anxious to eventually see complete freedom of all faiths. That's what the founding fathers were talking about, was eventually we'd have complete freedom of all faiths, which is what we have in America today, but we did not have at that point. It's kind of like the issue of slavery. We said in the Declaration in 1776, all men are created equal, yet we still had slavery here because the South would not give up slavery. They wouldn't join the Union, and so you had to have that compromise, that little 20-year compromise. It wasn't until the Civil War and the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments that we got rid of slavery, finally. So if the Founding Fathers, if their goal was complete freedom of all faiths and an equality of all religions, both Christian and non-Christian, how could this be accomplished without stirring up civil strife? Justice Story then describes the founders' solution, which was the Establishment Clause. They just said, well, we won't let the national government set a deal. In some of the states, Episcopalians constituted the predominant sect, and others Presbyterians, Congregationalists, Quakers. The national government, they said, Justice Story said, if the national government were left free to create a religious establishment, there'd be strife and jealousy and so on. The only security was in extirpating the power. I think that means getting rid of that power, right? Extirpating that power. But this alone would have been imperfect security if it had not been followed by the declaration of the right of free exercise. Not only can they not tell us what religion, but we have we got to have the right to exercise any religion we want, as long as we don't hurt anybody else. That's what America's all about. My right to swing my fist stops where your nose begins. My right to say whatever I think ends if it's going to defame or harm another person unjustly, unlawfully. If it wasn't followed by a declaration of the freedom of free exercise of religion and a prohibition, as we've seen, of all religious tests. So that's what they did in the Constitution. No establishment of religion, free exercise of whatever religion or non-religion that we have, and no religious tests for any government offices, and no religious tests. I remember in the 60s, I mean, I was young, but I remember when Kennedy ran in 1960, and I remember reading an article in Reader's Digest. Can we have a Catholic for president, something like that?
Will he have more allegiance to the Pope than to the country? That was the big question back in.
That was the big question. Would he have more allegiance? Yes.
Extirpate means to pull out by the roots. Exterminate completely, pull out by the roots.
Show off. So, Google it. Google it up.
You saw it.
You know, did you ever watch Bill O'Reilly? I just got to say, I don't believe for a split second that he knows all of those words at the end. And he always talks about, oh, that's a good word. I don't believe he knows a third of them.
Tom?
Yes.
In 1960, there was that fuss about the Catholic religion and the president, but there was not much fuss about the
Now it's pretty much accepted as a clear historical fact what a crook he was from the very beginning, but that's right.
I went and sat and listened to him.